I'm Meah Denee here with my best friend,
Trish.
and we are Shit Black Girls Watch. So we're really excited to start this new podcast. It has been something that we've been wanting to do for a while, and it really incorporates both of us and the things that we love, one being film, another being sex, and the last being just like Black Girl Magic. So that's the tagline, if you didn't know: film, sex, and Black Girl Magic. And we're just going to talk about why we wanted to do the podcast and tell you guys a little bit more about ourselves. So do you want to start, Trish?
Sure will. So again, I'm Trish. I love film, and the only thing I love more than film is probably sex. I am getting my PhD in human sexuality at a university in San Francisco. So I like to kind of find a common thread between the two when I can, and if not, that's fine too. But I just really enjoy breaking down films. I love anything behind the scenes, trivia. I love all kinds of genres of films. Whatever I can get my hands on. So.
Yes, indeed. You are our go-to sexpert.
I'll be there.
In the group. Yeah, I will definitely say that. And for me, I am an associate producer at Condé Nast. So, if you don't know, go look that shit up. I have been there for a year now. I really love it. And I am a content producer, basically. I have my own company called The Real Effect. It is a Black entertainment news site where you can find, of course, Black entertainment, but also resources for Black filmmakers that are trying to make it into the industry. So with that, I do a show and I post, and now we have our podcast, Shit Black Girls Watch. Me and Trish have known each other since the sixth grade. We're both from...
Yeah, it's been a minute.
Yeah, we're both from North Carolina. We went to school in Hope County.
Yeah, we talk about this because my address is actually Fayetteville. They sent me 30 minutes out of the way to go to school, but I'm glad they did because then we met.
That's so touching.
I know.
You're never sentimental. Thank you.
It's all a front for the pod.
All right, so that is a little bit about ourselves. When it comes to the podcast, we wanted to do this because, one, we have really different perspectives on the things that we watch, even though it's not like extreme perspectives, but Trish is definitely more the, as you say, the eclectic one.
Yeah, like my taste in film ranges from fucking Do the Right Thing to A Separation, which is a completely foreign film that I doubt anyone's actually watched. Great film though. So yeah, I go all over the place with my film taste and what it is that I'm watching on any given day.
Yeah, and I'm pretty basic, not gonna lie. I love Black content. I love Black filmmakers, Black actors. I love Black web series. So if it's anything Black, I'm all about it. So we're combining those two worlds, and we're gonna break down different topics like homosexuality in television shows and film. We're gonna talk about Black women tropes. There's just so many things that we're gonna hit on. And today's episode, we are going to be talking about what is today's episode? Oh, memorable sex scenes.
That was the one.
All right, let me just run that back. In today's episode, we are going to be talking about memorable sex scenes. So make sure you got your water because you might get a little thirsty, You might get a little parched, a little sweaty.
You might. You never know what's going to come, literally and physically.
All right, now on to the show. We are going to get into the first segment of the show, and we're going to start every show off with our Black Unicorn segment, similar to one of my favorite podcasts, The Read, where they have their highlight of Black excellence. We are giving you guys a Black unicorn that we love. Tell us who our Black unicorn is today, Trish.
So I'm really excited about this Black unicorn, just like I'm really excited about this episode, because it definitely goes into my interest, and that is sex. But when you talk about sex, it's not just the act of penetration into a vagina. We're also talking about inclusivity and like a really great understanding of, interpersonal dynamics. So the Black unicorns for this episode are going to be Michael B. Jordan and Alana Mayo. Exactly. Alana Mayo is the executive, producer for Outlier Society, which is Michael B. Jordan's production company. Super dope. The reason I picked them was because when we're talking about this inclusivity and stuff, they were one of the first people to adopt the inclusion rider, which I think is super awesome. The inclusion rider is basically where it's basically a stipulation in a contract where big name actors or even like lesser name actors can leverage their name in the film and demand inclusivity on set. Like they can say, hey, if I'm signing on to do this film, you need this amount of LGBT people, you need this amount of Black people, you need this amount of women. They all need to be speaking, like they need speaking roles. So it's really pushing for more diversity in film. So I
It's a game
appreciated
changer.
that. Absolutely. And it's not something that is, I don't know if it's necessarily not widely known or just not widely used, but when you're talking about stuff like that, you get into, and we'll be talking about this at a later episode, but you get into some more of those protective clauses and things like that. When you're talking about nudity clauses, when you're talking about having intimacy coordinators on set, that's when you start thinking about like what the actual inclusivity of a film set looks like.
Well, thank you for breaking that down. I, of course, love Michael B. Jordan. Alana Mayo, you may know her from being Lena Waithe's ex-wife. But besides that, she is an amazing producer. She most recently, actually, I was just reading an article earlier today, and she has a new role. She is the president of MGM's Orion Pictures right now.
Of course she is.
Yeah, so doing big things. She's been in the industry, I think, at least 15 years. So she's a smart woman, a strategic woman, and she understands film and television.
And inclusivity. She's also a Black queer woman of color, and proudly so, which, hello, so am I. So I appreciate that as well in her making, or her holding space for more Black women, Black queer women of color on set as well.
Awesome. We are going to add some clapping sounds.
Clap, 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 clap.
Let's move on to the actual main reason we are here, which is to talk about memorable sex scenes. What classifies a memorable sex scene for us? And so we had to break it down into a few categories, and a few, I guess, standards that every sex scene should have. So we started with level of passion. I think everybody agrees that passion is important in a sex life, unless you're just one of those, just trying to get your rocks off real quick. But
and when we're talking about level of passion, we're talking about like, is it hot? Did it build up? Was there like some sexual tension that actually felt real in there? If so, I'm here for it. That is delicious.
Yes. Did it make me a little tingly? Like,
I
want to hop into the scene.
Did my snatch do that pulsating thing?
Oh, also the sex.
When it like pulses real quick, it's like that.
But
like,
normally I need a little more.
Shit, I don't. I'm good. Start kissing. It's like bloop, bloop. It's like a heartbeat in my vagina.
I can't stand you. Make me snort on our first episode.
Yes.
All right, moving on. So chemistry. Do they seem like they like each other? They lust over each other? How real is the sex?
That is so important when we're talking about chemistry, because I was super excited for, and this is going to be a little bit off topic, but I was super excited for Issa and Lakeith in the photograph.
Not off topic.
I know, but when they like got together, I was like, that the chemistry just doesn't feel as real. And then when I watched, it was, and then when I watched Lovebirds with gosh, it's slipping my name. I mean, it's
is it? What's his? Oh gosh, yes, I know exactly who you're talking about.
It's sorry, I'm gonna look it up right now. We don't have any interns or anybody to look this stuff up for us, so we're doing it like on the fly. Oh, Kumail Nanjiani.
Yes,
I butchered that. Nanjiani. But her chemistry with him was so good and it was so believable. And then I felt bad because it was like I really wanted her to have that same chemistry with Lakeith, but I think she was just more comfortable with Kumail or whatever. And that for some reason that worked better in Lovebirds. Like her and him worked so much better in Lovebirds because of their chemistry. So that's super important.
Yeah, it was the silly, goofy attraction compared to, the more serious, like...
It was just too much.
Yeah. Okay, so level of passion, chemistry,
Then we have location and setting. Like, are they getting it in the backseat of a car? Are they in the bedroom? Like, what is going
Or
on right now?
sometimes, like, which were we talking about, their actual sex scene in Mr. and Mrs. Smith, where Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt were kissing in like some fucking foreign country, and that music was playing and it was raining. I was like, yo, whatever this location is, I would gladly fuck here.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love it, and I
It,
wanted some.
it makes a difference. And that leads into fantasy, especially when it comes to Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what is the level of fantasy? Like, do I actually want to do this in real life and reenact this scene? Like, what are we doing here?
I definitely want to shoot at my husband and beat the shit out of each other and then fuck on the floor.
I don't know if I want that fantasy,
You know,
but
like what's that was definitely a fantasy.
that was definitely a fantasy. Okay, and the last of our categories for this is personal preferences, and that includes like personal hygiene. Do I like you to be freshly clean? Do I want you a little sweaty? You know, there are different preferences when it comes to the person watching the
Girl,
sex scene.
that is really important because sometimes when you're watching like those historical pieces and stuff and you just kind of like know the vibes, like y'all was throwing shit out the window, bruh. I don't know if I want, like, if I'm as turned on watching that as I am, you know, two people in like modern times. Like there's a certain level. And then there was this troll movie I had watched and they were like fucking in like the grass and it was dirty and it was like really weird. But I was just like, this isn't turning me on because there's so much dirt and there's like dirt getting her vagina and there's dirt on his penis. There's dirt on their faces.
Yeah, like if they're having sex on the beach, I'm just like, it's just too many things that I have to start thinking about when it comes to my vaginal health.
You
So,
know, pH balance is a thing. Like I'm super picky about that. Like I don't want, or when you're talking about movies like fucking Don't Be a Menace to South Central and stuff, where he's putting hot sauce on her toes and then like he's probably gonna go eat her out with that hot sauce in his mouth. Like stuff like that just doesn't like do it for me. And this might be us just being like OCD.
I don't think so. I think there are women out there that think like us. But we're
Good.
not going to
They
get too deep
should.
into that
Yeah.
today. So, all right, let's talk about our top picks because we have a few different categories when it comes to our favorite sex scenes. We have our top picks, our honorable mentions. We have bad sex scenes and the almost made it sex scenes, and then the toxic, no good, no bueno sex scenes.
Right, because when we're talking about those, like to clarify, when we're talking about the almost made it, we're talking about, and I feel like I have to clarify this because we weren't even quite sure when we did it. We're talking about the scenes where it's like they're heading towards sex, but they don't necessarily make it to sex, but it still meets those criteria, like the level of passion, chemistry, like the fantasy, personal preferences. Like it still meets that just without the actual act of sex, which is
Yeah,
hot.
or well, some of them actually were scenes that actually like it was inferred that they had sex, but we didn't see
Oh,
them have
yes, yes,
sex.
yes. Like
Yeah.
if we just don't see it. Yeah, good stuff. And toxic, we'll talk about that.
All right, so let's get into our top picks. I think both of our top picks is definitely Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Oh, easily. When you talk about a fantasy, like I can't think of a better movie. One, they're both super ridiculously hot.
Oh, so
Like Brad
precious.
Pitt and Angelina together there was so much sexual tension leading up to that. Like when they were having dinner and shit before they even fought and all that, I was like, they are gonna fuck and it's gonna be so good.
But the fact that when they did finally have sex, like literally the house was burning down, like the
Oh,
kitchen
that's so
countertop was
hot.
on fire, like
That is so hot.
there were gunshots in the cabinets, like it
part
was
of me
so
feels
intense.
like part of me feels like this could be just, you know, as a disclaimer, this could be considered toxic. However,
It's so
they
toxic.
yes, but it was also like come on, man. I'm not
But
putting that in the toxic category when it exists the way it does. Like I'm not considering that toxic. That shit was a whole fantasy. It was super hot. They still loved each other. There was a lot of mutual care and consideration after they beat the shit out of each other. I'm here for it.
but also we didn't add toxic to our list of what sex scenes have to have or not have. So I'm cool with it as well. All right. I think another one of our favorites is The Notebook.
Yes, and I actually recently rewatched The Notebook, and I was like, you know what? I rewatched it to see if I still wanted to leave it on here, but I'm gonna keep it only because like the build up to it, like again, Ryan Gosling and fucking Rachel McAdams, their chemistry was ridiculous,
Yeah.
and the fantasy of like they were both kind of clean because they got rained on, so I'm assuming that washed away any dirt. Um,
I
but
don't know, but actually, I feel dirty after I get rained on. But that's
I
beside the
know.
point. The
I was
fact
trying
that
to clean
they,
it up a bit.
the fact that they came out of what they're in the boat, and they came out of the boat, and now they're
Yes.
finally in this house that he built for her. But she
Girl.
didn't know that at that point, right? I don't
It,
remember.
no, she knew at that point, and she was asking why he didn't write her and all these different things.
Oh
But girl,
yes.
if you build a house for me, I'm having sex with you.
First of all, the way he ripped off her clothes when they got into that house.
Nobody rips off clothes anymore. We need to talk about that one day. Like the fact that shit doesn't happen in real life is ridiculous.
And then also another thing that I haven't really experienced is when you come in the door, like basically already having sex and making out. And then what killed me in this scene was the fact when he pulled down his pants.
Girl.
And he walked up the stairs with his pants
her
around his ankles,
okay.
carrying her.
But to be fair, I'm going to tell you in just a second. To be fair, you and I are about 5'11". Rachel McAdams is 5'4". She's probably like 130 pounds.
Look,
he can do that. I've had dudes try to pick me up and like they've been grunting like, ugh. Like they gotta drop my ass really fast. Like they can do it,
just
but they're not about to carry my.
He was able to do that with his pants around
hot.
his ankles. I was like, he was focused and dedicated.
Girl,
he's been waiting for this for so long.
And there's something to be said. Like, I'm not a person that prefers kissing, but I liked that they were like really connected the entire time. Like all the way up the stairs, all the way into the house, like all the way in the bed. Like everything was like connected between them. So that was more of like one of those sweet fantasies where it's like, if I want to make love to someone, it's going to be like Notebook style. And
it was perfect.
That actually leads into our other pick was Love and Basketball. Because when I think of like sweet sex, I think about that too.
Oh. Love and Basketball is such a classic film, first of all. But I think when it comes to me personally as a Black woman, Love and Basketball is like the epitome of what my virginity image would be, or my how I would lose.
I wish it happened that way. Like I think Love and Basketball.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I think Love and Basketball is everybody's like, especially for Black women, like that's everybody's like virginity fantasy. Like, This is how I would love, like, a longtime friend, someone I trust, someone who cares about me. We come to the realization later on in life that we're completely in love with each other. And because of the fucking 18 years of sexual tension that has been building between us, we have some really hot, passionate sex on prom night because that's just when everybody does it. Like,
and
that
I
was...
I want Maxwell to actually be playing on the radio while we're doing it.
Girl,
like, I need all of those vibes.
I have been trying to fuck somebody to Maxwell's This Woman's Work for years. Ask me how many times I've done it. 0.
And I just love how innocent they both were in the scene. It wasn't rushed, first of all. I hate sex scenes, like taking virginity sex scenes.
Girl.
That's so rushed. Like, they really took their time, and I appreciate it.
And they actually showed, and that would be we're going to talk about that in a second with honorable mentions, but they actually showed him putting a condom on, and like they took the time. I think that was more prevalent in the 90s, like this whole like actual let me take the time out in this scene to show him using protection.
Yes,
because that shit don't happen no more.
It really doesn't. They just get to it. Like, they just ram their dicks inside, and I'm just like, hold up. Like, did we agree here?
There is no build up, and then it's like he was checking in with her to kind of make sure she was good. Like, how many? Like, please check in with me. Like, I am here for that. Like, sex is not something that happens to women. It's something that happens with them. And I don't know if men appreciate that all the time. There's a warm-up process to it. There's a whole, like we take a little bit longer than you guys do to be ready for penetration.
Seriously.
So,
I love that line you just said. Sex isn't something that happens to women, but happens with women.
Oh, girl, because people don't understand that. Like, if you let certain people, and by that, I mean, we've all had sex with a person like that. If you let certain people tell it, like, we are just tools for masturbation, because basically all they're doing is sticking their dicks inside, coming, and then pulling out. And it's like, that's not sex, you know, that's just you masturbating inside of me. And I don't really want that. I want to be connected and I want to be in the moment, because sex is when I'm at my most vulnerable, you know? Like, this is when I'm the most naked. It's when I'm the most vulnerable version of myself. And that's important when you're talking about like these sex scenes and stuff. I think that's why film sex scenes appeal so much to us, because they're more thought out than actual sex. And if we actually took the time to think about the sex that we're having or how we're having it, I think it would be much, much better.
Beautiful breakdown, my friend. So let's get into, oh goodness, I'm just gonna hop into Power.
Yes.
So Power for me, especially the first season with Ghost and Angela, even though their relationship was beyond toxic, and I really hated the fact that, you know, he left Tasha for Angela, but when they were together, I was rooting for Angela in this like love affair. And it was so intense. Like, it was just so their dynamic and like the energy, how they were connected and how they were like obsessed with each other.
It was hot.
It was so great. And then, like, of course, it's on Stars, so of course we get to see all the good goods. So,
and Ghost be plowing. Like, his stroke is wild.
Ghost doesn't play in the bedroom. Even his sex scenes with Tasha are very
like, sir, come on, man. You want to talk about like a pulse, like bloop, bloop, bloop. That shit was going with Power. And while we're talking about like TV shows, like nobody does it better than HBO. And while we're talking about TV show sex scenes, we cannot forget Issa and Daniel and Insecure.
I knew you were going to get into this.
Yes, because that shit was hot. Even though it was cheating and technically toxic, that shit was hot.
But I feel like we all agree that the most iconic sex scene is, of course, Lawrence with Tasha. Like, even
that shit was
all of
wild.
The sex scenes of all 4 seasons, like Lawrence and Tasha, season finale of season 1 is just like ridiculous.
I think Lawrence and Tasha, that would be a fantasy of mine, in a sense of like, there are certain people where I don't want to date you and I don't want a relationship from you at all. But gosh, if that lust isn't strong, like, just let me like express that and like let me love you in this moment, because I really want to experience like your body.
But also, it wasn't even lust. It was anger. That's that mad sex that people really love. And I've never experienced it, but people really go crazy over like angry sex or makeup sex, if you want to put it that way.
We definitely have to talk about that, because I was talking to my friend Ray Leo on her podcast about, you know, how our emotions tie into sex or whatever. And I was telling her, like, I actually can't get turned on when I'm mad at somebody. So that wasn't, but I think if Lawrence was trying to fuck Issa in that moment, he wouldn't have been able to.
Agreed.
I think that angry, that was just like a displacement. We call it in therapy, displacement, where you just refocus your energy somewhere else. So he refocused that anger into blowing Tasha's back out. Now, I think on Tasha's part, it was very much like, oh, I'm feeling lusty. Like, I've been wanting this guy for this long, blah, blah, blah. So she was getting her back blown out in like the best kind of way. For him, like you said, it was like a displaced, like, I'm angry at Issa, let me blow this chick's back out. I don't think he really felt anything. And we saw that later on as their relationship progressed or whatever, that he was a fuckboy.
But can we also get into freaking Dro and Molly? Because we didn't discuss this originally. We was talking about Issa and Daniel. But I don't know. I kind of like Dro and Molly, even though it was toxic as hell. If he wasn't in an actual marriage, I think they would have been great for each other.
I would argue, okay, so for, like I said, for 3 to 4 listeners out there, I actually am what would be considered ethically non-monogamous. I don't particularly subscribe to monogamy as a lifestyle. So I would argue that it wasn't toxic on Dro's part, because Dro was being ethically non-monogamous. His wife knew everything that was going on. He didn't deprioritize his relationship with his wife. Like, he was doing everything that you would normally do in an ethically non-monogamous relationship. It's just that Molly wasn't being honest with herself when she decided to enter that with Dro.
No, I definitely agree with that. Like, it was toxic for Molly is what I don't care about Dro.
Oh, okay. Yeah. For Molly, it was definitely toxic, because I think she thought that was something that, one, she wanted, or two, that she was capable of doing, and realized, and it's not for everybody, because when you want to, like, we'll talk about this one of these days, but when you talk about like handling jealousy in non-monogamy, like, it's difficult, and that shit never goes away. People think that if you can practice non-monogamy, then you never get jealous, but that's not true.
But I feel like it was also a fantasy for Molly, like, just the fantasy of like feeling that you're actually like in a relationship, something that she was desiring and actually wanted and actually like cared for, and like,
definitely,
yeah.
I think that ties into like what we were talking about, like fantasy, chemistry, you know, location, setting. Like, they were doing it in a way that was safe for both of them. Like, she was with somebody that she had known for years. Like, there was a level of safety and trust there that, you know, I mean, she wasn't getting with other guys, clearly. So
yeah,
I was here for it.
But let's get back to our main guest of our main topics, basically, for this sex scene, Insecure with Issa and Daniel. I'm trying, like, actually, their sex scenes are like hit and miss for me. Like, my most iconic sex scene is like when he freaking nutted in her face.
Ooh, so I actually, if we wanted to talk about that, like, I do think she overreacted to that. I don't necessarily.
I think we all agree that she overreacted to that.
Yeah, she overreacted. But I do think with Issa and Daniel, I think the scene I'm thinking of is when she cheated on Lawrence and she fucked him in the studio. That was kind of a fantasy for me, because they had been drinking, the sexual tension was building. Plus, cheating is like a taboo thing. It's not something I've personally experienced, but the idea of sneaking around is kind of hot.
Yeah, and they were on that like bohemian carpet.
Yes. Or I thought they were on the couch. They were on like a couch because he was in them guts. Like, his cheeks were clenched trying to get as far in there as possible.
I have to go back and watch this episode.
I watch it every few days.
Okay, I'm kidding. Right? And I just glossed over it. I really didn't comprehend what you just said. All right, so we are actually going to get into our honorable mentions. We had a full list, but to keep the episode short, we are just going to mention our favorite honorable mentions. So for me, it is definitely She's Gotta Have It, and I am talking about the television series and not necessarily the movie, even though I prefer the movie over the series. But when it comes to the sex scenes, season 2, episode 1 was just basically a porno. It was so wild. I was just so surprised. One, that this is on Netflix. Two,
Netflix be having some wild shit.
I know, but to me it was like Stars level. Like, it wasn't even. It was really intense, and I'm all down for it. Like, DeWandy Wise looked amazing.
Oh, she always does.
Yeah, but it was just, I just hadn't seen a lesbian sex scene like that before, especially on Netflix. So I was just really surprised. It was very enjoyable, but I think it was a little bit overkill because they did it in like 3 different places and they were intercutting the sex scenes in all locations. But yeah, I just felt like I was watching a porno for about 2 to 3 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not complaining.
I'm not complaining too much, but I'm just like, if we're talking about great sex scenes, then that's top lesbian sex scene all around.
See, I would mention Blue is the Warmest Color, but that's kind of an obscure movie, but definitely worth watching if you guys are into lesbian sex scenes. So I think for my honorable mention, I'm going to go Beyond the Lights, because when you talk about the fantasy aspect, the chemistry, Nate Parker, and I don't know how to pronounce her name, but I think it's like Gugu.
Yes. I love her.
When I tell you, one, she is so gorgeous. So is Nate Parker. But like, the buildup in that film was just as good. And then she fucked him on that damn airplane. She put them headphones on. He was scared of heights. Yes. So I know like fear sometimes intensifies like sexual like reactions. So I can only imagine how good that must have felt, because he was getting all like these sensations at once. And then when she started fucking him, he ended up saying he loved her and then had to take it back because he wasn't thinking clearly. And I was like, that's good.
Has that ever happened to you?
No, but that's why I was like, I wish.
I've definitely had a man like getting it in and he's just like, I love you. And I'm like, what? Hold up. Huh?
Excuse me. Excuse me, sir. Did I hear you correctly? Like, yes. I'd take it, because she was like, she laughed it off or whatever. But I would have been like, yeah, you do. Of course you do.
You love this good in this Mile
Yes.
High Club that we're in right now.
Do you want to talk about the bad sex scenes or Almost Made It?
Let's get into Almost Made It and then hop into the awful.
Okay. So when we're talking about like some of these sex scenes, because I think Beyond the Lights teeters like a fine line of, you know, whether they do or they don't. When we talk about like the Almost Made It sex scenes, one of my all-time favorites, it's actually one of my all-time favorite rom-coms, like just in general, is Crazy Stupid Love. When Emma and Ryan Gosling are in the house and he does like the little jump thing from Dirty Dancing. That shit was pretty hot. And plus it felt more authentic than most things. Like she was nervous, she was being awkward, she couldn't like it wasn't like this streamlined sex scene where, you know, they just went and everything was just synchronized. I love when people do like can honor the authenticity of what like an actual sexual encounter looks like. So for my Almost Made It, Crazy Stupid Love, the scene where they're almost having sex, but she accidentally ends up spending the night and getting to know him instead of like actually fucking. I really, really love that scene.
It was really cute. I enjoyed
Super
that
cute.
for sure. Yeah. I would definitely say my top Almost Made It sex scene is Girls Trip with Tiffany Haddish.
I love that movie.
Oh my gosh. The fact that, well, we all know the scene where she basically was showing Jada Pinkett's character how to give head with a grapefruit.
Have you ever done that?
Hell no.
That shit like seems good in theory, but I don't know that it would actually. I've never done it, but that seems good only in theory.
Kofi came out there running because it was burning his dick. Like,
yes, I can imagine. Grapefruits are acidic. Don't put that near a pee hole. Your urethra does not want acid near it.
Maybe a melon or like. Because this is an actual, if you don't know, this is an actual like performance that is done by a so-called sex expert. Like
yes.
You can Google it and you could see her doing this exact same thing that Tiffany Haddish was doing. Of course, not as amazing as Tiffany.
Look, she was putting her best work in.
Oh my God, that scene in itself, I want to go watch it right now. Like, it's just so funny. I don't know if it's relatable because I don't know what women are doing this with their girlfriends to teach them how to get
Look, I like, as far as I knew, you put a dick in your mouth, you suck, you move your tongue around the bottom, and that's good head. But these women are getting fucking creative. If somebody were to like challenge me to a dick sucking contest and told me I had to use fruit, I'm out. I mean,
I wouldn't know what to do.
Exactly. What am I supposed to do with this big ass grapefruit? I'm gonna eat it. Wasting food.
Okay.
I think I would be remiss if I did not also mention, and the only reason I would put it in Almost Made It is because they juxtaposed it to something not so sexy.
I was gonna get to this next as well.
Yes, was Queen and Slim. Ugh. Girl, I was beautiful waiting for that sex
scene, and then I don't want to say they messed it up, but it just messed up my like vibe and energy with the sex.
Yes, like I couldn't enjoy it,
and I didn't know how to feel, honestly.
Like I can't have my vagina pulsating while some kid is shooting a cop. And I get that there was probably a reason behind it. That was actually like, that movie was flawless to me, with the exception of that. And I only say that because like I really wanted to enjoy their sex together because, again, I'm all about build up. I'm all about sexual tension. For that scene, I was waiting for it. And I was waiting for it. Was very raw, like them just fucking in the car. You know, they were sweating. Like it was like, that was one of those moments where hygiene didn't matter to me. No. In a sense of like fuck that. Like that was raw, passionate sex. And I was here for it.
And we all knew this could possibly be the last time they ever have sex again.
Exactly. Like there was a high stake in that. And like I wanted them to have sex before like that shit went down in the end. So I think watching it with that, like watching it with the contrasting like scene of the kid and the cop, it kind of threw me off and I couldn't really like yeah, like I really wanted to sit there and enjoy that. I really wanted to be like pulled into that scene, but part of me had one foot in and one foot out because I also knew what was going on in the other scene. So I would say that would be an Almost Made It for me because I couldn't really enjoy the sex the way I wanted.
Agreed. Can we do one more before we move on?
Yeah.
So I totally want to get into What Men Want with Taraji P. Henson and Aldonis Hodge. So that scene to me was one freaking hilarious. If you don't know, What Men Want is basically Taraji P. Henson gets this gift where she could read men's minds, and so she's having sex scene with this beautiful man, and so she's getting it in, but she's of course like I guess trying to figure out what he really wants. So she's going in all aggressive and riding him all aggressive, and he's like, oh my gosh, like what is she doing? Like she looks crazy. So then she tries to switch it up. And it basically turns from being an awful sexual experience to a great sexual experience, which I appreciate the fact that even though she could read his mind, they took the time to talk about what they liked and what they didn't like, and took the time to basically like allow themselves to be like free in the moment.
Yes. And I think that's really, really important, because I think that going back to Don Juan, they kind of did something similar where she explained, like, you have one-sided sex. And he was like, what are you talking about? I'm good at sex. And she was just like, no, it's like I'm not really there. So I think when you're talking about like what men want, I do think we go in like, the problem is we try to apply a generalized way of having sex with everyone, but people are different and people like different shit. I've had certain men who've loved nipple play. I tried that shit on the next guy, and he was like, what the fuck are you
Like,
doing touching my nipples?
Hold up.
Exactly, like pushing my head away, like, what are you doing near my nipples? And I was like, oh, you don't like nipples? I'm sorry. But it's one of those things where it's like, you have to talk about that stuff. So I can appreciate that too, where it was actually like, okay, do I like you fucking riding me like a racehorse off rhythm or whatever, or like jackhammering me? Like, no, but let's figure out what works.
So yeah, let's move into our bad sex scenes, which I'm so excited to get into.
I am so excited for bad sex scenes. I would love to start bad sex scenes.
Go ahead.
Okay. I'm clearly, and this is a really obscure movie. I'm not sure many people have seen it, but if you've ever seen The Room,
oh my God,
you know why I picked The Room. This is my one, like, I love a good bad movie, and this is the best bad movie of all time. It is fucking hilarious.
It's so pointless.
It's
the length of this movie because of all the sex scenes.
Girl. So there's actually some fun like background. If you watch The Disaster Artist, they give some of that background. But basically, like, Tommy was convinced that if he did not show his ass in that movie, it would not sell. So on top of this awful sex scene, the music is skipping throughout the movie. They actually use the leftover scenes from the first sex scene. It ends up being like somewhere around like six minutes, I think, of sex. Just sex scenes alone. It's fucking weird.
Crazy, because I was watching it and I'm just like, okay, cool. The first two, I was like, all right, cool. But then there was like one really, really long one.
Girl, it's so long. And he's like fucking her belly button or like her chest. Like he is damn near her sternum, fucking grinding his dick. And it's like, imagine this actually on set with him having like the little cover up on his dick or whatever, just rubbing it all over her fucking stomach. Like there was nothing about it that looked appealing.
I'm like, Netflix paid for this for us to watch? Like, why?
Oh my gosh. It was
on Pornhub, man. Pornhub.
It should have, well, I don't even know if anybody would watch it because that's how bad the sex actually is. And like the music that's playing is weird. Like everything leading up to it is weird. There's nothing appealing about like the sex that they're having in that movie.
It was.
It's just like the perfect example of bad sex.
Also because the storyline was basically he kidnapped her because he saw her I don't want to say he saw her in the vision. He saw her in a previous experience where his father died at the same location. And
wait, which movie are you talking about?
The Room.
No, this is The Room with Tommy Wiseau.
What?
It's like
we're talking about two fucking different movies.
Oh girl, I'm talking about the one that The Disaster Artist is based off of.
No, isn't this the same? There's a movie on Netflix called The Room, right?
I watched a wild one that was new. It was like 365 days or some shit. And that one was weird. It was like basically 50 Shades of Grey for like Netflix.
Oh, it's 365 days. Is that what you're talking about just now?
That's what I was just talking about. Because that movie, we can talk about that one too. Because that movie was wild.
That's the movie I was just talking about, how bad the sex scenes were, or
Girl,
how long the sex scenes were, because they weren't that bad. It was just they were so freaking long. But The Room is definitely an awful movie in general.
just in like it's such a good bad movie. Now, if we're talking about 365 days or whatever, that movie was fucking wild. He did kidnap her. That shit was super toxic. It reminds me of this book, Captured in the Dark, that's really fucking weird, but really good. But he kidnapped her, told her she had a year to fall in love with him, and then she was like
Yes.
she was only halfway resisting, and then they ended up fucking.
She was only halfway resisting because he lived such a luxurious life, like,
and he was kind of hot. Like, I get it.
Hot, yeah.
But that reminded me so much of 50 Shades of Grey, and I hated it. I watched the entire trilogy because of who I am as a person, but I hated 50 Shades of Grey. Like, I hated it so much. I thought they lacked chemistry. The sex was bland. It was boring. They were just kind of like taking what should have been a really good exploration of kink and, BDSM culture, and they kind of just botched it and made it like some weird dynamic that's not even like sexy.
I haven't seen what was that movie we were just talking about?
50 Shades of Grey?
I have not seen 50 Shades of Grey.
Girl, don't.
Because I heard how bad the scenes were. Specifically from my mom, who has read the Zane trilogies.
Yeah, same.
And she was just like, it's nothing compared to Zane. I was so disappointed, and
because
I never watched it.
They botched an opportunity to explore BDSM, like, and that, for people that don't know, BDSM is bondage, domination, masochism, and sadism. And they took an opportunity to explore like this kink lifestyle, and they turned it into some weird, like, obsessive, codependent, just like gross, like, I want to have sex and every time I touch you, you're gonna come. And it's just like, that's not real. I don't want you to touch my fucking belly button and I come everywhere.
Well, also, wasn't she like a virgin, supposedly?
Allegedly. I say allegedly because she was interested in doing some wild shit up front, and no shade to do what you feel, man. I don't know. And then he wanted a submissive, but she wasn't actually a submissive. It was just a really weird dynamic, and I think they just completely butchered it.
Well, let's move on. Bad sex scenes. One of my top favorite bad sex scenes, honestly, is the sex scene of Whitney Houston and Waiting to Exhale. I don't know.
That was so bad.
It gets me every time. Like, first of all, it's starting off with she's just like admiring this man with his muscles, and then she's like, hold up, is he using my toothbrush?
That was nasty. Like, don't ever use my toothbrush.
Gross. And then, like, for him to just think he is straight the shit, like, he had that pipe, like, he's about to lay it down, and then for it to get to that sex scene where he becomes a wild animal, but not wild enough for her to feel anything, obviously, because that's there.
That is an example of like how sex occurs with most men. Like, don't talk shit like, you're the best, you're like a god at sex, and then come and give me like a 5-stroke and then be out. Like, at least if you're gonna do that, don't big up yourself like you're not, because that's really disappointing.
So disappointing.
That sex with him looked really disappointing.
It was so bad. And then the fact that, like, I'm not gonna lie, I do enjoy when a man has like very loud orgasms, because it makes me feel like I've accomplished a lot and all I've done has laid there.
you ever had a dude that makes like zero noises whatsoever?
Oh,
like,
God,
where he's just super silent.
Did you come?
Like, did you do anything? Did that feel good? Like, did anything happen for you? Or were you awake?
I'm just like, am I doing this right? Is
my pussy trash?
Right? Is it okay? Is it wet enough? Like, what's going on?
Something. Like, give me some reaction. All you get at the end is like a grunt, like a like, oh, okay, something happened. Clearly, I guess.
It is so funny because there's literally no in between. It's hard to find the in between man. It's either they don't say anything, or they make too much noise, and it's like really enjoyable.
I don't think I've ever had somebody that's like a happy medium. It's either been like saying my name, asking me whose is it, and do I like it, and talking just nasty shit, and I'm like, I love it. And then there's like the super silent types where it's like, and then lastly you get a, it's like, okay.
Or like, and then sometimes you don't even get that. You might get a, like,
yes, it's so simple, and it's like, how dare you? That's it.
And then also, like, if you're in it, you won't even hear him. Like, you're so focused on what you're doing right now. I'll be like, oh, wait, should I stop?
Yeah,
oh,
like,
you came? Oh, my bad.
And it's like, as women, we're already in our heads enough. Like, I'm already in my head enough as it is. Like, I'm trying to come. I have to focus on that. Like, I have to focus on what feels good because it takes me a while. I'm one of those people that can't come from penetration or whatever. So for me, it's like I'm already in my head. So you're not making any noises. You're not saying anything. You're not reacting at all. So now I'm even more in my head like, oh, well, clearly I should head out because this is not going well. And it's like, it could be going well, but I'll never know.
Oh, man. So, yeah, that is a hilarious scene for me, always.
Yeah, definitely. I did want to talk a little bit about some of I know we gotta wrap it up, but I did want to talk about like the toxic ass baby boy.
Oh my gosh. So when it comes to toxic films, it's fucked up because like I feel like so many of us have experienced toxic sexual experiences.
Girl, yes.
And the baby boy scenario, I think Baby Boy is already an iconic hood classic movie. But also I feel like a lot of people actually like the sex scene in Baby Boy, but it's so freaking toxic to Taraji's character.
It is, and it's like that sex scene especially is coming on like the end of like abuse too. I think it says a lot about the realness of the Black film experience, and I think there's a reason we were attracted to that because a lot of us have seen relationships or been in relationships like that where it's a toxic kind of attraction where we don't have the healthiest behaviors. We might be putting our hands on each other, whatever. Like it's just not a good situation, but the sex is good, and that's one of those things where it's like like people ask that question, like, have you ever stayed in a relationship just because of the sex? Like, yeah, yeah, I have. I sure the fuck have. Nothing else about it was good. There was no communication. He was toxic, all that other shit, or she, whatever. And here we are still fucking.
Yeah, hooked on the dick.
And while we're talking about that, definitely Carrie Washington in Scandal. Pretty much that whole show was toxic as fuck. So all of her sex was toxic.
I hated it. I started hating her relationships with men on that show.
It was just so like a lot of them were unhealthy, and it's like the ones that were healthy, she didn't really know how to navigate. And I kind of hated Fitz.
I've been hated Fitz. Like I was so over this nigga. Sorry, I'm a little tipsy right now. I've been drinking sangria since we started.
I've been smoking on that sticky. so what else?
So I can't really talk too much about Scandal because I don't remember the sex scenes as much, except them like going into like weird rooms to have sex without anybody
all
knowing.
Over the White House. I think the one that sticks out to me the most is when he pulled her into like that sound room or the electric room or whatever, and he was fucking her in there, and I was like, this is super hot, and I was into it in the moment, but the whole time I'm like watching their relationship, I was like, I did not desire to be a part of this at all.
No, I don't know. I think the only women that would want something like that are like power hungry women. And sorry if I'm like being insensitive, but
no, I don't think there's anything insensitive about it. I think I don't think you're necessarily judging. It's just a matter of like, this is just not a healthy situation. And I feel the same way about Belly. I feel the same way, like we were talking about Baby Boy. We could talk about every single one of the 50 Shades of Grey. Like there's a lot of these toxic dynamics that are sold as like passion. And it's like, I think that's why we sometimes confuse when we're in a toxic situation anyways, because we've got it in our heads that passion is the same thing as like, codependency. And that is not the case. That is not the case at all. Codependency looks like those toxic ass situations, those toxic ass relationships.
Well, I think this is a great place to end the episode. Dove, we really dove into a lot. And I enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, I think it's important to separate fact from fiction. I think that's why it's important to cover, what makes good sex scenes, and understanding how that ties into reality, because the media, like all kinds of media, whether it be a magazine, whether it be a film, television, whatever, will sell you sex in a way that is like, sex is penetration, sex is just straight missionary, everybody comes at the same time, women don't need foreplay to get turned on, they're immediately ready to go. And it's just like that, not like, that's not real. And I can engage in like a fantasy of what sex should look like, or what I would love it to look like, without necessarily subscribing to that being authentic sex.
Agreed. Well, for this episode, I hope you guys really enjoyed our first episode. I'm really excited for the topics that we have lined up. We literally have 10 episodes already planned out and brainstormed for you guys. So definitely tune in. Make sure you subscribe to our show, Shit Black Girls Watch. Next week, well, let me not say next week, next episode, we will be talking about Black women tropes. All right. Love always. I'm Meah Denee.
And I'm Trish.
Peace out.